Hi, I'm a higher ed CMO and I have a confession to make. I actually didn't apply to any colleges. My parents told me what university that they would pay for, which ever grateful that they paid for my college. But it was the university that I was attending as a high school student. So in my state, if you were a certain rank in your high school class, you could take college classes at the University of Minnesota or any other institution in Minnesota. And the state actually paid for those credits. And so I just kept going to the University of Minnesota because that's what my parents said they'd pay for. And so I have not really a lot of personal experience with college search. And because I don't have any children, I don't have any sort of secondhand knowledge either. And so when Denise Lamphier shared with me information about a project that she undertook with her son to collect all of the materials that her son got over his time from his freshman year until his senior year and kind of do a little report on what that looked like. I was absolutely fascinated. And I think that you will really enjoy hearing Denise's insights in this episode. Welcome to Confessions of a Higher Ed CMO, the podcast designed for higher education marketers. I'm your host, Jaime Hunt, and I am so excited to have this opportunity to share insights and inspiration. With Confessions of a Higher Ed CMO, I'm designing a different kind of podcasting experience. With each episode, I'll be bringing in a guest for a deep dive into the challenges and joys we all face in higher education marketing. After each episode, you can join the conversation on Twitter by using the hashtag HigherEdCMO. I would love to see this become like a book club, but for a podcast. And be sure to follow me on Twitter at JamieHuntIMC. That's JamieHuntIMC for more opportunities to connect. I'm absolutely thrilled to be here with Denise Lamphier, who's the Director of Marketing and Communications at Des Moines University. Denise, how are you?
I'm great. It's so exciting to be here, Jamie.
I'm so happy to have you. I was telling Denise before we started recording that when I saw the PowerPoint that she presented at the Cup Rep conference about the topic we're tackling today, I got so geeked out. Like I absolutely was like, we have to have her on the show. This is going to be amazing. So before we jump into talking about the project that you undertook with your son, tell us a little bit about your higher ed journey.
Yeah. It's been a little bit all over the place, to be honest with you. I've spent most of my career either working for higher ed or healthcare, and in some cases, I've been doing both at two different places. When I got my undergraduate degree at the University of Iowa, I worked in the public relations offices for the colleges of medicine and nursing and pharmacy. Did a quick stint as a daily newspaper reporter, and then worked at Grinnell College in Iowa for a number of years. And then I always joke that I got the only other public relations job in Grinnell, Iowa, at the hospital there. And I actually stayed a little bit longer than I ever intended to, but it was a very progressive place and learned a lot and had a lot of fun there. About 6 years ago, I was like, I miss higher ed. And I was fortunate enough to get a position leading the communications team at Central College in Pella, Iowa. And I stayed there for about 5 years. And I just very recently joined the team at Des Moines University promoting the medical and health sciences here in Des Moines.
That's awesome. So I have to end this conversation now because I didn't realize you went to University of Iowa, which is just
Oh, is
my,
that
arch enemy. So
Oh,
it's been
no, fight
great.
those are fighting words? Oh, no.
I had someone on my staff at Miami went there, and it was just this constant, because I went to University of Minnesota, this constant like battle between us. Every time she'd be like, "Oh, yeah, I'm from Iowa," I'd be like, Yep. Nobody's perfect, you know?
Right. Well, this is true. I will say though, one thing that Iowa did do really well this year was basketball, women's basketball. How about that? Like, you have to give us that, right, Jamie?
Well, you beat us all the time, so I I am contractually obligated to hate Iowa, but I do have to acknowledge that you are superior to us in most sports. My sister
Oh,
actually just took a job at the University of Minnesota, and I'm just like the proudest big sister ever.
that's awesome.
Yeah. So, you tackled this amazing project with your son. I would love to hear from you about this project that you undertook with him.
Key word there is project. Earlier, when you and I were talking, you called it a study, and I want nothing to do with something as official as that because there's just so many ways that this is not, scientific. It's really a mom's perspective who also happens to be a marketer who's been doing this for a while, and watching her ninth grader through 12th grade son experience how colleges were approaching him and kind of some of the things that I took away with the support of my team at Central College at the time. It was one of those things, it takes a long time for an idea to come to you. And then other times you're like, I'm doing this and it's going to be amazing. He received his very first piece of college material in August, right before he started his freshman year in high school.
Wow.
And I had been working at Central, maybe a little over a half a year at that point, and it was fascinating watching him get this piece. Again, he's only a freshman, he's very young. He was jazzed. "Mom, I got this piece in the mail from a college and feel it. It had like a soft touch on it. And so he
Ooh,
was
yeah.
really enamored with this soft touch material. I can't believe that colleges are already recruiting me. Like somebody wants me. Like that was,
Aw.
his wide eyed freshman take on it. I'll be honest with you, by the time this project was all said and done, he was like, oh, not another piece. Please make it stop. Um, which is, I think, part of the lesson of what I have to share for us all in terms of figuring out all of that. And so, kind of in that moment, I was like, huh, I wonder if there's something that I can glean from this because I'm back in to higher ed after being out of it for a number of years and focusing on healthcare marketing. And so I had a conversation with him a few days later and I said, I've been thinking about you getting that piece of mail and I'm wondering, would you embark on a 4-year project with me? And I'm thinking if we could do this, we get the pieces in the mail, we'll date them as soon as they arrive in the house. So, we had a big old black Sharpie by our mail place at home and we date the materials. And then he also agreed to write in a journal about like his take
Oh.
on some of the pieces that he got. Sometimes they were really thoughtful comments, and other times they were like, "Yep, there's another one with a tree on it." Um,
I'm guessing that happened a lot.
It did, more than I, would like for colleges and universities to
Yeah.
continue to use, right? That would be a
Like
piece of advice.
a
Find something
kid with a
besides
backpack under a tree.
right?
Yeah.
And a building, don't forget the buildings.
Yes.
So he, agreed to do that, and so I would also kept a journal about my, take on his responses. So that was helpful to me later just because I decided, oh, I've got enough material here to write an essay about this experience. So that was one of the first things I did with the gleanings. Well, first more outwardly facing thing I had done with the gleanings that I had taken from him. Being a visual person in marketing and communications, I thought, I wonder what the rest of my team can learn about this process too, because um, there was just a lot. And so I talked to them and I said, "What do you think about if we tape all this stuff up on the wall? Like, yeah, we could put it in a box, but then it's in a box and we'll probably forget about it." And so I went out and I even bought Central's colors are red and white. And so I even got branded tape.
Nice.
And for the 4 years of this project, we taped everything up on the wall in the communications offices
Wow.
at Central. So you really kind of got a feel of start and stop and lurch and progression in a different way than you do if it had just been in a box. And I think too, some of the things that we noticed from that process was you could like tell, oh, these were done by vendors.
Yeah.
These were actually done by the college and university. Oh, these were sent not only done by vendors, but the admission office did not involve the communications team in the in the evaluation of this document. And so like those were some of the things that we picked up. We also we saw some trends over time, and obviously in the middle of all this, unfortunately, we had to deal with a little thing called a pandemic. So there was a really abrupt change then. I've often wondered what things might have looked like over the 4 years had we not had a pandemic. I can share at some point how many pieces of material he received, but I think it probably would have been more if we hadn't had that pandemic in the middle of all of that.
Did you print out emails and paste those up as well?
No, we did not do that because there would not have been enough enough wall space. In fact, with the pieces that he received, I actually had my husband come down to Central and he measured. We're estimating about 900 square feet of wall space
Wow.
for the 4 years of just the print materials. But Emory did give me access to all of his emails in his school account, so I could go in at any time. He would usually just put them in a folder for me, and then I would sort them by college or university so I could see how many he was getting from different places and what the themes of the week or day or year might be. He did not even journal about those. He quickly learned that that was just gonna be way more of a time commitment. So again, that's also why this is not a scientific study, right? We didn't even look at, unfortunately, we didn't talk much about websites or social media or videos, and so many of the other integrated marketing tools that are important to the work that we do. So this really is just a glimpse at like a few of the things that my son experienced during that piece.
Hey all, I hope you're enjoying this episode of Confessions of a Higher Ed CMO. I want to take a moment to thank my friends at MindPower who are making Season 2 of this Involify podcast possible. MindPower is a full-service marketing and branding firm celebrating nearly 30 years of needle-moving, thought-provoking, research-fueled creative and strategy. MindPower is woman-founded and owned, WBENC certified, nationally recognized, and serves the social sector, higher education, healthcare, nonprofits, and more. The MindPower team is made up of strategists, storytellers, and experienced creators. From market research to brand campaigns to recruitment to fundraising, the agency exists to empower clients, amplify brands, and help institutions find a strategic way forward. You can learn more about their work in the world by heading on over to MindPower Inc. That's MindPowerinc.com. And be sure to tell the crew that Jaime sent you their way. When I was looking at your findings, I was struck by some of the metrics, like some of the sheer volume. Can you tell us a little bit about what some of those statistics are for the materials that he received?
Sure. Well, over 4 years, he was recruited by 90 different colleges and universities,
Wow.
and he was a good student. I mean, he's not, valedictorian of his class by any means, but when he was in elementary school, he was part of the talented and gifted program. And so when he was in seventh grade, as part of that program, he did take the PSAT,
Mm.
which is also why I do think that he started receiving college materials right before his first year of high school. And I also think simultaneously, Jamie, that the pandemic postponed the timing for when many of his other classmates who hadn't been part of that program started getting materials because they sometimes weren't getting things until like mid junior year. So
Wow.
very shortened recruitment phase for them. So 90 different colleges and universities over that 4 year period, he received 5,228 emails.
Oh my God. Were they all
um,
from Miami? 'Cause that's about how many we sent.
He also received 300 postcards and then another total 300 other direct mail pieces that varied from letters and view books to flyers and pamphlets and those kinds of things. I didn't really go deeper into categorizing those. There was just a lot of them. And he also received 27 handwritten notes.
Hmm.
I thought that was an interesting, differentiation. And then finally, one frisbee. He received one frisbee in the mail.
Did he receive any other swaggy type things, pens, T-shirts, anything like that?
Um, the other items like that that he got were not mailed.
Okay.
They were all part of like campus visits and that kind of thing. So nothing out of the blue in those early recruitment days before he had kind of finally raised a hand and applied or gone for a visit. That triggered more activity and swag. But in those early days, rather, I think the swag opportunity came with, hey, fill out this form and we'll send you a tip sheet on 5 ways to get into the colleges of your dream world, or variations on that theme.
Did he
um,
do any of those things?
no,
No.
no, he did not. um, he adamantly refused because he totally knew that what all of us were after were his email address and his phone number. In fact, at one point he told me that um, he didn't understand why colleges and universities asked for that information because he was already getting enough stuff, and didn't they realize that? So
Yeah.
I thought that was an interesting perspective. One thing that I also found interesting is that over the course of the time that he was doing this, he did occasionally get emails and a small handful of letters that said, "Thank you for requesting this information," that he didn't request.
Ah, interesting.
I was immediately accused of, "Hey, mom, you filled out this request for me. I know you did." And I honestly, other than, the only interference I had was asking him to please fill out his journal. Like, this needed to be his college experience, and I didn't want to um, drive that in any way. So even though it was really hard, 100% as the marketing mom, not to fill out some of those because I was dying to see
Yeah.
them.
Yeah,
Um,
right? Well,
I didn't fill any of those out. So yeah, that was interesting.
that's amazing. 90 colleges. I feel like that offers us a pretty good glimpse at what it's like to sort of have to stand out from the noise if you're
Right.
recruiting those high ability students. I remember my sister's gonna hate this story, but I got a very high score on my ACT, and it was every day was view books. I mean, it was just view books, view books, view books, view books, view books. This was like really long time ago, so there wasn't really internet and like email then.
Right.
Um, but my sister, who did not get as high a score, she's a very smart person, but she did not test on standardized tests as well as I did. Um, didn't get that many, and my parents had thought that that was like what I got was what every kid got,
Oh, sure.
Yeah. So it was like this, this massive pile to have to sort through. But 90 is a lot to try to, and then spoiler, this is spoiling it for listeners, but did he end up at any of the schools he was receiving materials from? And I know where he ended up, but the listeners don't.
Yes, he did end up at one of the places that he was receiving materials from. And ironically, of all the places that he ended up going to, I'm still surprised to this day because it had one huge disadvantage that the other places did not, and that was that I worked there. Um, he was very adamant that he was not going to be going to Central, but we continued to send him stuff and invite him to campus visits, and he kind of finally acquiesced, and he loved the campus visit. And so even despite the fact that I was working there at the time, he did choose Central College, and I think I have some numbers somewhere. I did. They were on the lower end, actually, of some of the places in terms of how many pieces he received over the course of 4 years. I counted them, including the emails, and I don't remember the email count off the top of my head, but over 4 years, he got I think it was a little over 40 pieces from Central that included at the end things after he had deposited. So we were trying to prevent melt and
Mm,
those sorts of things. One college sent him 387 emails over the course of the 4 years. They were the winner chicken dinner on the number of emails sent, and they were so random, like, and they didn't know much about him, so I kind of understand the randomness. Like,
yeah.
they didn't know he was a music major or music, a guy who liked music and maybe wanted to major in communications, and they didn't know, and so I think they were just throwing all the darts on the board to see if anything would stick.
I'm dying to know what school it is, but I'm not gonna make you add
Yep.
it, but I am
Nope.
gonna ask if it was Miami
No.
University, 'cause I think that's about the volume that we were sending to prospective students when
Oh.
I was there.
Yeah, nope. I can assure you it was not that one was not Miami. And again, this whole process too, I'm not gonna out anybody. We all make mistakes, and I think the other thing too that, like, the spirit in which I approached this project was what can we learn from it, and how can we make each other better? Because at the end of the day, we all make mistakes and do silly things that, maybe didn't work as well as we thought they did in our heads.
Yeah.
So, yes.
Well, and there's also, like, the external pressure, like, I hate to say this, but, that was a precedent where more is better, you know? So it was like, how many emails did you send? 100. Well, let's send 200 because maybe that will double our results or whatever. So, so you just don't know what the comms teams were dealing with on that side of things
Oh,
too.
right.
Yeah.
And again, I think, what I learned even would be like some talking points to talk to that president about, like, do we really want to send more emails to the average kid who might be getting 5,228 emails over the course of 4 years in the same inbox as the homework assignments that they're getting
Yeah.
for school? Emory did not include his social calendar stuff in that. When he agreed to let me do it, he moved that over into a different email account, which I don't. Again, it was all very respectfully, but they're also like having their life in there
Yeah.
too, and it's hard to filter out, especially when on any busy calendar day, besides doing homework and participating in extracurricular activities, there's homecoming and dating and all those things. So
Like the just life.
yeah,
Yeah.
it definitely helps kids learn how to be allergic to email.
Yeah, right? Then we're shocked when they don't read their email when they get to campus.
Right? Yes, we've
So
kind of
true.
trained them.
So are there trends that you noticed? Were there volume shifts? And I know the pandemic may have influenced this a little bit, but did you see any trends or shifts over the 4 years?
Yeah, obviously that first year it was a trickle. There wasn't a ton. Things started picking up for him in the fall of his sophomore year. And those would have been those search pieces with those themes of fill out this form and we'll send you information that we know you're dying to have. And he was still getting those when the pandemic kind of opened up the door to that fun time, and things just, like, shriveled to next to nothing in terms of those, direct mail pieces, but the email really amped up at that point because I think we were all, you know, uh, punting and trying to figure out how can we stay in touch in this crazy, undecisive world. As things started rolling back up again, the first thing I noticed was that QR codes were back,
Yeah.
and I had to eat some crow after that because I had literally in 2019 said, "QR codes are dead. No one's using them." And they came back in full force. And, some colleges really took that to advantage and branded them and did them well. and other colleges just went with the free little square that you could get off of any service. And I'm telling you, those branded ones are pretty dang impressive as he progressed into. Once he started making visits and talking to counselors, he did start getting more personal mail. And I will share with you that one of the things that we talked about at Central was, can we do some more like handwritten notes even before
Mm.
they're um, more serious in the funnel? What can we do to attract a kid who's, in the pool, is maybe an inquiry but hasn't applied? How can we use a handwritten note to affect change? And then the other trend, Jamie, that I saw was that more and more colleges started offering um, scholarships, or as my son called them, fake scholarships, um, to come to campus for a visit day. The offerings were, I think the lowest one I saw was like for $400. And then there was a one college that offered a $4,000 scholarship if you would just come to campus for a visit one day.
Wow. And you're totally right that I think I saw in your PowerPoint that, your son said they're just tacking that on to the
Yeah.
price of tuition.
Yep, yep, kinda seeing right through that.
Yeah, that he's
The
very savvy.
he well, I he is a s I am a that proud mom marketer,
Yeah.
so it's yeah, he made the dean's list on the his first semester of college too, at Central, so, I'm annoyingly proud of him, yes.
So, are there any pieces that stood out positively? And were the pieces that stood out positively to him different from the ones that stood out to you?
Mhm. Um, okay, so I found him to be very tactical. So the feel of the paper was very
Mm.
important to him. Um, so he would spend more time with something if he liked how it felt.
Oh.
Um, Another thing, and this surprised me, and it also, I think, at least every college and university I've ever worked at, especially if there's like, 50 to 70 or more majors, this is like the bane of our existence. But he loved the major lists and the
Mm.
minor lists, and he poured over those and kind of used those as a deciding factor on whether he was going to spend much more time with a piece. And if a major that he was thinking about wasn't included in the list, it just got pushed aside and didn't get looked at again. If it was there, then he would spend more time with a piece and dive in and at least read it or skim it. Yep.
Were there pieces that stood out to you that he was like, "Eh."
Actually, one more thing that he was also enamored by is the use of his name.
Mm.
So the more personalized a piece was, the more he liked it. And creative uses of his name too. So like a postcard that just said Emory in big letters on the front side, and that didn't use trees or buildings. um, that 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 grabbed his attention and kind of, I think in his journal, Jamie, at one point he wrote, "Yeah, that kind of made me feel a little special,
Oh,
in a real way." So, which also surprised me because it was a postcard, and you and I both know that that's just,
yeah.
variable data,
It's
but
super easy. Yeah.
right. But again, it's super easy. So why aren't we doing it, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And the bad part is now, we're sharing all these trade secrets, and then everybody will start doing it. But
Right.
again, I think it's also, we all just need to learn how to be thoughtful. For me, in terms of what stood out the most, was like I could literally see, or I like to kid myself that I could see when a college or a university had a plan based on the flow of communications he was getting from them, or if they didn't. I saw everything from those 90 colleges to one place sent him one email, and that was it, and we never heard from them again.
Wow.
And like, why did you even bother?
Yeah.
What are you hoping to get out of that? One email. And then I did share with you the other institution that had sent 387 emails, and they were also the highest performing direct mail piece
Mm.
university for him. They won on all fronts of bombarding him with information digitally and in the US Postal Service.
Was he impressed by the Frisbee?
Um, no.
Good to know before we all rush out and spend,
Yeah.
$5 on
Uh,
a Frisbee.
the thing that amazed me about that Frisbee, first of all, it came in the mail. There was a message. It was about a visit day and a scholarship offer for that particular visit day. So that was impressive that it did not come in an envelope. It was mailed as an irregular parcel. So it was the Frisbee itself, and then on the underside of the Frisbee, it had the mail label, and
Wow.
that was it. So it was very intriguing to me from that perspective. And I also have to tell you, even though Emery thought it was ridiculous, and those were his words in his journal, I will share that the thing that I want to give props to that college for is out of that massive amount of material, they were the only college or university that sent him a Frisbee. So it was memorable. Um, and I was like, kind of wondering if we could harness that creativity in a little bit different way. What could we have accomplished? But I still want to give them props for thinking out of the box and trying something new and recognizing that, we wanted to, they needed to get some attention in a different way.
That yeah, I'm very intrigued by the Frisbee being mailed just as the Frisbee. That's
Yeah.
really interesting. I'm also curious, you mentioned a little bit about the photography. Were there certain types of photography that resonated with him better?
hmm He liked groups of student
Hmm,
pictures.
interesting.
Those were attractive to him, and I think again it was like, where do I fit, into this? Another thing that I thought was interesting over the course of 4 years, and I doubt he would have noticed this if he hadn't been writing in a journal, but also in for awareness purposes, he never came to my office at Central. So once it left the house, it was kind of out of mind.
Yeah.
Um, but it was amazing to me what he did remember collectively over the 4 years. There was one college that for every visit day they did, they literally picked a different campus building with a different tree. And they did a color overlay that was branded for them, and then the front of the over that then put "Come see our to our visit day on such and such a date." And in his journal, he wrote, "Yeah, I've gotten like 6 of these exact same postcards from this college." So because of that journal entry, I went back and looked at them. They actually weren't exactly the same, but they were so similar that he thought they were the same, and that
Interesting.
really stood out to him. There was another college that over the 4 years, I had counted this one too. They sent him a total of 30 different pieces over the 4 year period, and he did not apply there, so it was all like apply or informational about their university. And they had a favorite picture that they used 3 different times
Wow.
on 3 different postcards. 2 of them were for a visit day, and one was about, I think, financial aid. And they used the same lovely young lady to promote that. And if you think about that, that's 10% of the content that they sent to him. They used the same exact student who didn't really resonate to my son. And he even wrote in his journal, "Do they not have any other students? I want to see the other students." Um, so
That's really interesting. Yeah.
yeah.
I'm very I would love to talk to that, communications staff about did they just run out of time? Did they just not have enough photography? Like, what drove that decision?
I thought the same thing too. And again, there was, for all of us, at least 4 to 6 months, right, where we weren't getting any fresh photos or
Yeah.
or content. But surely our libraries are should be should be a little more extensive than that. So I mean, she was beautiful. Um,
But it's interesting that that wasn't necessarily, um, appealing to your son. I worked with somebody before I was, like, the senior level communicator at a previous institution, and the senior level communicator said, "Always put pretty girls on the front because boys wanna see pretty girls go there, and girls wanna see that pretty girls go there." So I thought it was like, never put a boy. Nobody cares about the boys. Everybody cares about the girls, and there was no science to that, but it's an
right?
interesting juxtaposition.
Well, and maybe I don't know when your leader was sharing that information with you, but I think the other thing too is that times are changing and they're changing faster. And I think with this generation of students too, like they're not afraid to share their opinion or be thoughtful about what's important to them. And diversity was really important to
Mm,
my son in terms of are there diverse students on campus, and is the college and university showing that? All colleges are trying to make sure that they're being sensitive to that. But again, I think just something to pay attention to for all of us as well.
yeah, absolutely. When I was at the AMA Higher Ed Symposium in November in the senior leadership experience, I'm not sure if you were there or not. It was a pretty
Oh,
packed room, but we had a panel with a bunch of students, and one of the things that jumped out at me was their emphasis on A, showing diversity on the campus, and then B, they were super interested in accessibility. On the panel, about half the panel was saying, like, if they couldn't find information about accessibility within a few clicks, they
they
just
were out,
ruled the school out. One of them did, I believe, have a visual impairment. So for her, it was a very practical matter, right?
right?
But some of them, it was like they cared about the world, and if they felt it was important that if the school wasn't showcasing its accessibility, that they didn't want that wasn't a place they wanted to be. And my gosh, I love Gen Z because that's a
Right?
tremendous way to think about things.
Right? It's all for one for all, and in ways that certainly when I was applying to colleges wasn't the case.
No,
Yeah.
absolutely not. So I'm curious about how did your son, if at all, use the materials to make a decision about his college choice? I know you said the visit kind of sold him,
Mhm.
but as he narrowed his list, did the pieces play a role in that?
Yes, 'cause, there were some colleges that he would have never heard of, being someone who grew up in the middle of Iowa, right? And in fact, so he ended up applying to 5 colleges total, and, uh 3 of them were not in Iowa, 2 were in Iowa. The other 3 were really in far-flung
Mm.
places, and they were all selected because they were one of the 90 colleges that, had, been sending him
Oh.
things. The other reason why he selected them was because they were far, far, far away from home, and he he fancied himself as, someone who was gonna go strike it out there
Yeah.
and um uh obviously he was paying attention, and obviously it drove him to apply to 3 colleges that he never would have heard of otherwise. At the end of the day though, and this is the part, right, like having our whole livelihoods, Jamie, contingent on the decision-making process of 17-year-olds, um, is like, this process was definitely for me, like, even more eye-opening into how mind-boggling that truly is. Again, my husband and I tried to be there for Emory to have conversations. We both have attended college, but he also kind of wanted to do it on his own. He doesn't have siblings, so he is an only child. In 100% honesty, while he was in high school, the counselors were also scrambling. So there wasn't a lot of, I think,
Oh,
some of those traditional things that high school counselors spend time on with students. And so he was kind of clueless on how to make a decision.
yeah.
And so I think he picked 3 big colleges far, far away from home, and then had these 2 other colleges that he'd heard of before, and, kinda went from it there. He did go on, a number of college visits, and, what, he found varying degrees of welcoming, and that matters. That
Mhm.
mattered to him more than I ever would have thought. We were able to get him in to do a overnight visit, and he loved being able to eat in the cafeteria and stay in the residence halls with another music student. He got to jam in the band, go to practice one night. So his final decision making, I think, came down to the fact that he really, really had a great visit. The red carpet was literally, shown to him. And even though, but this is where it gets frustrating because what I also see is like our work is so hard because at the end of the day, oh, how much does it matter?
Yeah.
Um, because the other decision making factor was that he chose a college that's 45 minutes away from his home where he can go home and see his pet guinea pigs as often as he wants to. Um,
Oh,
yeah.
that's awesome. That we can't overcome the guinea pigs, right? Like,
No,
and
yeah.
there's no way for us to know about the guinea pig. Like,
No,
there's no.
no, or even any, tough situation that a
Yeah.
student might be going through, whether something's happening with a sibling or a parent or, all of that is just beyond any grasp that we can have, which is again another reason why I think relationships with the admission department are really, really crucial because that's where I think some of that information can be garnered. We help with that top end of the funnel, and then hopefully we can turn it over to our wonderful peers in the admission office who can figure out that this kid needs a on-campus overnight visit and he needs to eat the vegan food in the cafeteria because it will help him make that decision and give him that relational conversation and support.
At a previous institution, somehow we collected like the names of people's pets, and and I don't know if we actually did it or only talked about it, but we talked about sending a postcard to the pet of the student
Oh,
with so at this institution, the president had two dogs and they were very popular and they were always out on campus. And so it was from those dogs saying like bark, 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 and then like a translation of, you know, we know your person is looking at our school. We'll take good care of them. They'll get to pet and
aw,
scratch us and all that kind of thing. And I don't know if it was a good idea or a bad idea because it's so hard to measure the metrics on
right.
some of these things, but I thought that was kind of like a fun way to maybe show like stand out in the crowd a little bit. But
Yeah,
I feel like the guinea pig, like that's like a whole nother like
right.
level of animal to try
I
to
know.
communicate with.
I know. And I mean, at least with dogs or cats, you can like, if you wanted to, you could probably send them some branded like overshirt, right?
Yeah.
They don't make small enough ones like that for a guinea pig.
when when I got to Miami, I had my baby tortoise. He was kind of a baby then. I think he was 6 months old, and I was trying to buy like stuffed animal shirts to fit on him to take pictures of him. It was very, very challenging, but yeah. You never know what's going to make something jump out. My college choice was 100% my parents saying, "This is where we will pay for you to go to college." Like,
Yeah.
cool. That's where I'm going to
Oh,
college.
right?
But you just don't know, like, what are the decision factors and who's influencing, and are they gonna like the pretty girl on the cover or not like the pretty girl on the cover and all of that. As you've undertaken this project, what are some of the biggest lessons that you've learned or that you'd like to share with the audience?
hmm well, first of all, the number one thing, well, I have so many number ones, but uh,
Number 1A.
right? 100%. After literally looking at 5,228 emails, please spend some time on your subject line writing, folks.
Mm,
I will share with you my personal number one. I hated it the most. Uh, subject line, and it was, "Today is your deadline, top candidate."
I've sent
The
that.
No, no, you did not.
I'm sure my institutions, at least one of them has sent something like that.
There was a lot of fake braggy or congratulatory things, like top candidate is an example of ways that I saw colleges and universities try to deal with that in subject lines and in the content that they were sending. And again, he saw right through that. As easy as it is to do variable mail merges, even in emails these days, even in the subject lines,
Yeah.
why even it couldn't have been today is your deadline, Emery.
Yeah.
Um, But the deadline part is another thing that I feel like it's important to talk about, because there were a lot of emails out of those 5,228 emails that focused on that theme of today's your deadline. We need this from you today as your deadline. And what I really hope, if anybody doesn't hear anything else that I say today, I think a great lesson is those are our deadlines. They are not our students' deadlines. And so, whatever we can do to actually be more prospective student friendly and thoughtful. I know we talk about the student journey and creating a cast of characters who we might market to on our storyboards. But at the end of the day, we're still sending them information about deadlines that are important to us. There are our deadlines. They are not the students' deadlines. They just want to go to prom this week or whatever, you
Right.
know.
Yeah.
So something to think about there. I also, again, highly encourage us all to work closely with our vendors. If we need to partner with them, and they're so valuable to the work that we do because a lot of us are working on short staffs, and there's not enough of us to go around, and it's hard to keep up in a digital world. So we need expertise, but there's things that we know better also because we're on campus and we know
Yeah.
who our students are, and so we need to make sure that they're hearing that. I recently told another colleague who was working with a vendor who didn't want to meet with them very frequently. And I'm like, they're your vendor. If you want to meet with them quarterly or monthly or weekly, then they should want to meet with you that frequently. And if they don't, find another vendor.
Yeah.
And partner with them because they're going to do better work for you and not treat you like a cookie cutter college, if you will. Another just quick highlight, Jamie, is I think when you can personalize your content, manage your lists. One story I can share from list management, my son, who has grown up in Iowa and is um, very tall and very white and not diverse, received a piece in the mail from a college and university inviting him to come to campus on a multicultural visit day. And because he was a multicultural student, they would give
That's
him a scholarship. And, in his journal, he wrote, thinking as a white guy, I'm not eligible for this, right?
oh,
And
yeah.
so that's a big miss. And it's as simple as just making sure your lists are clean. One college sent him two of the exact same postcards on the exact same day. They landed in our
Ooh.
in our mailbox. And
Ouch.
yeah. And Gen Z love them, but the environment's important to them. They don't want to see two pieces of the same thing on the same day because they want better from us. Keep it authentic and focus on what you are good at as a university. And it's not trees and buildings, right?
Mhm.
And even on those scholarships that we talked about too, why should I come to campus to visit? Is it really the $4,000 scholarship? Or in the reverse of that, there was one college that offered him, if he came to visit, a $25 dad hat or a fanny pack. His choice of for coming to campus to visit was a dad hat or a fanny pack. And in his journal on that particular piece, he wrote, you know, round trip, that college is 6 hours away from my house, and I'm not that interested in them. And a $25 dad hat, or, I'm not spending that much time in the car for that.
Yeah.
And also, like, what does your university or college have to sell? Keep it focused on
Yeah.
on that because they do want to know that. My final one, and I hear this a lot, there can be tension a lot between admission and communication offices. They seem at ends with each other. And I have to tell you, the best work happens in a space where it's collaborative and team oriented. And I was really fortunate at Central. That's exactly how we approached it. We did a lot of really incredible things there because we were on that journey together. We shared information. We met every week at a designated time with an agenda based on a marketing plan. that was flexible because, if
Yep.
things needed to change, we needed to change, What's the data showing us in real life, in real time this week? Are we down on FAFSA filings? Do we need to tweak anything that we're doing? How's our student demographic shaping up for the next class? Do we need to tweak anything with that? I mean, those were the kind of conversations that we were having amongst not just me and the vice president for enrollment. It was our team members all participating in this conversation and affecting change and making a difference. And I can't tell you how much I felt like that really mattered to the work that we were doing. And it just made it a lot more fun to do too.
I cannot even stress enough how amazing it is when you have a good relationship with enrollment management and
Right?
how you get those sparks that come together. And it always feels good when they're like, oh, something's down in this area, and you can kind of be agile and come up with a potential solution to help bring those numbers up, or whatever. It's just, there's magic in there. And I hate when I hear about campuses where the CMO and the enrollment
I
management
know.
people don't get along.
Right?
Like, that's just, you're both missing out so much.
And so are our prospective
Yeah,
students, right?
yeah,
And the campus community. So can't
yeah.
agree with you more. Yep.
Ego doesn't have a place in this,
No,
but
no.
unfortunately it often gets in the way. But I feel really, really lucky. So, Denise, this has been absolutely fabulous and hopefully very enlightening for people. If people are interested in learning more, where can they find you?
Probably the best place to find me is on LinkedIn. That's where I keep most of my professional comments and work right there. So reach out. I'd love to hear from you.
And she's written a couple of articles about this as well. I'm sure if you Google her name, and you'll be able to find them. It was for Higher Ed Dive, is that right?
Yep, that's correct.
Yeah,
Yep.
there's two. I actually uh, just completely devoured both of them because they've
Oh,
really
thank
got
you.
into this on a really great level. So yeah, so you definitely reach out to Denise if you have any questions about that. If you have any questions for me, as always, you can find me on Twitter at Jaime Hunt IMC, JaimeHunt IMC. I'm also on LinkedIn. I'm spending a lot more time over on LinkedIn these days, so hope to see you over there. And as always, please use the hashtag Higher Ed CMO to engage in conversation about this on either of those platforms. Denise, any last thoughts before we close?
I think just keep fighting the good fight. Your work matters. Learn from it. And if something doesn't work like you had hoped, try again. And in a sea of materials, your whole livelihood does not matter on just one piece.
That's really good advice. Awesome. Well, thanks for listening, everybody, and bust some of those silos.
Hey y'all, Zach here from Enrollify. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Confessions of a Higher Ed CMO with Jaime Hunt. If you liked this episode, do us a huge favor and hit that follow and subscribe button below. Furthermore, if you've got just 2 minutes to spare, we would greatly appreciate you leaving a rating and a review of this show on Apple Podcasts. Our podcast network is growing by the month, and we've got a plethora of marketing, admissions, and higher ed technology shows that are jam-packed with stories, ideas, and frameworks that are all designed to empower you to become a better higher ed professional. But Enrollify is far more than just a podcast network. Enrollify is where higher ed comes to learn new marketing skills, discover new products and services, and find their next job. We're a growing learning community of 4,000 members, and we'd love to welcome you into the fold. You can access our free blog articles, newsletters, e-courses, and more, or purchase our master course on how to market a university with Terry Flannery at enrollify.org. We look forward to meeting you soon and welcoming you into the community. Again, you can subscribe for free at enrollify.org.